Usually, when we think about planting a garden, there's this expectation of like perfect conditions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You want the nutrient-rich soil, the exact right amount of sunlight, the perfectly timed watering
Yeah,
schedule.
it's a very controlled environment.
Exactly. You create this pristine little space, and you just wait for the seed to sprout. It's very logical. Good input equals good output.
Which is, I mean, it's a formula we apply to almost everything, really. You see it in agriculture, sure, but also in education or business.
Yeah, but then occasionally you're just, walking down a city street and you see this tiny, vibrant green plant that has somehow completely shattered a thick slab of concrete to reach the sun.
Defying all the conventional rules of where growth is supposed to happen.
Right, like it has no fertilizer, no caretaker, no ideal conditions whatsoever. And yet there it is, thriving.
It's just wild to see.
It really is. And that image, that concrete shattering seed, is the perfect lens for today's stack of sources.
It really sets the stage perfectly.
Yeah, so for this deep dive, we're looking at a fascinating mix of historical wikis, encyclopedias, Catholic devotionals, and even the official site of a global religious congregation.
Quite the variety of materials today.
Yeah, and our mission here is to explore how a 4th century legend about a miraculous basket of fruit directly inspired a 19th century educational movement.
Yeah.
A movement that changed the lives of countless marginalized children.
And we're going to look at what that 1,500-year legacy means for how you, the listener, handle your own life's limitations.
Because the overarching theme here, across all these sources, is the idea of blossoming through adversity. Both of the historical figures we're focusing on faced just devastating suffering.
But their legacies are entirely defined by growth, right?
Yeah.
By gardening and by nurturing others when they themselves were given almost nothing.
Exactly. So to start, we really have to go to the roots of this story, which takes us all the way back to the 4th century.
Right, to a woman named Dorothea of Caesarea.
And for some geographic context, Caesarea is modern-day Kayseri in Turkey. And the year is right around 311 AD.
Which is important because that places us near the tail end of the Diocletianic persecution.
Yeah, and for anyone who needs a quick refresher on Roman history, the Diocletianic persecution was not just like casual discrimination.
No, not at all.
It was a famously brutal state-sponsored campaign to wipe out the Christian religion entirely. I mean, the empire was systematically stripping citizens of their legal rights.
They were demanding universal sacrifice to the Roman gods, and if you refused, well, the consequences were severe.
Right. And this is the environment Dorothea finds herself in. Our sources describe her as a young virgin who was arrested and brought before a Roman prefect named Sapricius.
And according to the historical accounts in the later devotionals we reviewed, she was tried, tortured, and ultimately sentenced to death because she absolutely refused to renounce her faith.
Which is where the narrative takes a very cinematic turn, honestly, on her way to the execution.
Yeah, the historical wikis note that there's this pagan lawyer in the crowd named Theophilus.
Right.
He sees Dorothea being led to her death, and he decides to, mock her. He yells out to her, "Bride of Christ, send me some fruits from your bridegroom's garden."
It's just a deeply cynical public taunt.
Exactly. He's weaponizing her belief in a heavenly paradise against her, basically turning her impending death into a punchline for the crowd.
Yeah, it's like sarcastically asking a friend to bring you back a souvenir from some imaginary vacation they claim they're going on.
Right. You're doing it specifically to highlight how delusional you think they are.
Exactly. But then, according to the oldest versions of the legend found in our devotional sources, right before Dorothy is executed, a 6-year-old boy suddenly appears in front of Theophilus.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. And the boy is carrying Dorothy's headdress. And inside that headdress is a basket filled with the heavenly fragrance of roses and apples.
And we have to pause on the timing and location here because it's critical to why this story resonated so deeply for centuries.
Yeah, the feast day.
Right. Her feast day is recorded as February 6th. The sudden appearance of fresh, fragrant roses and apples in the dead of winter in the mountainous region of Cappadocia.
I mean, that would have been a geographical and seasonal impossibility.
Completely impossible.
Yeah, and the medieval manuscripts detail that Theophilus was so completely shaken by what the texts describe as undeniable physical proof that he immediately confessed to being a Christian right then and there.
Just completely flipped his worldview on the spot.
Right. And because he made that public declaration, the Roman authorities put him on the rack, and he suffered death as a martyr himself.
And this specific story of, sudden, impossible fruitfulness in the face of death, it became a massive cultural touchstone.
You really did.
Saint Dorothy grew incredibly popular in the Middle Ages. She was venerated across Europe as the patroness of gardeners, florists, brewers, and brides.
People would literally bless their trees on her feast day.
Yes. And major Renaissance artists like Lucas Cranach and Zurbaran painted her, and almost always depicting her holding that signature basket of apples and a crown of roses.
Which actually brings up a really bizarre contradiction in our sources. You have this figure who is revered for over a millennium, painted by masters, deeply embedded in all these agricultural traditions.
Yeah.
Yet, in 1969, Pope Paul VI issued a ruling called Mystery Paschalis. And this ruling actually removed St. Dorothy from the general Roman calendar.
Yeah, it's a huge shift. And the Vatican's reasoning was purely historical.
Right.
The evidence for her actual verifiable existence was deemed too sparse. Her official records of martyrdom were virtually non-existent outside of the legend itself.
So the 1969 ruling concluded that she lacked universal significance.
Universal significance.
Yeah, that phrase really jumps out of the text. It feels incredibly bureaucratic, A modern institution looks at the historical ledger and decides this 4th century story just doesn't matter enough to keep on the main calendar.
It's very clinical.
But the incredible irony we found in the rest of our sources is that 1,500 years after she supposedly died, this same figure who lacked universal significance ends up driving a profound, entirely tangible global movement.
Right, and to understand how that happened, we have to look at the human continuation of Dorothy's legacy. We are moving from 4th century Turkey to 19th century Italy.
Specifically the city of Genoa in the year 1809.
Exactly. This is where we meet Paula Frassinetti. If Dorothy is the seed in this narrative, well, Paola is the soil.
Though reading through her biography, the foil appears to be completely barren. I mean, I really want to push back a bit on the typical hero's journey narrative we often consume in these historical deep dives.
Oh, for sure. It's usually very neat and tidy.
Right. Usually the protagonist gets a mentor, or they go on an adventure, or they gain some special training. Paula gets none of that.
None.
She's the only girl in a family of 5 children. Her father is a cloth merchant. When she's just 9 years old, her mother dies unexpectedly.
And then an aunt steps in to help run the household, but 3 years later, when Paula is just 12, the aunt also dies.
Which is just heartbreaking.
It is. And at 12 years old, Paula is forced to abandon her formal education entirely. She has to step into the role of running the household and essentially become a mother to her 4 brothers.
Wait, so she is isolated, completely uneducated, and geographically stuck inside her home doing chores.
Yeah, pretty much trapped.
And meanwhile, her 4 brothers, who she is raising and supporting, by the way, are all getting formal educations and going off to become priests.
Right, they get the full academic experience.
She is watching them live out these grand religious vocations, engaging with theology and philosophy while she's like sweeping the floor. How does someone in this highly restricted position even develop the capacity to lead a global movement later on?
That is where we have to look closely at the mechanics of her environment. Yes, she lacked formal schooling, but she was entirely immersed in an intellectual and spiritual incubator.
Oh, interesting.
Her home was constantly filled with her brothers and their seminary friends. They were always debating theology, discussing social issues in Italy, talking about church history.
So she's overhearing all of this.
Exactly. Paola was absorbing all of this through osmosis. She was getting a rigorous, informal education just by being the person serving the tea and listening to the debates.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
She was gathering the theoretical tools she would need later, even if she didn't realize it at the time.
Exactly. But the physical toll of this life was severe. I mean, by the time she's 19, the years of labor and stress catch up to her.
Yeah, the sources say she develops a severe respiratory illness. They describe her as being in a state of physical exhaustion, like unable to perform basic functions.
And this illness seems like the absolute end of any ambitions she might have harbored. But looking at the timeline, it acts as the necessary catalyst.
Because she's too sick to run the household.
Right. Because she's so sick, she is sent away from Genoa to a small seaside village called Quinto. She goes to live with her older brother Giuseppe, who is a parish priest there.
Right, because 19th century medical practice often prescribed sea air for respiratory recovery.
Exactly. So it's forced rest.
She's totally removed from the daily grind of the household.
And in that forced rest, her perspective expands. As she regains a bit of strength, she starts noticing the environment around her in this rural village.
Right.
She sees the local children. These are poor, uneducated kids, mostly girls, who are roaming around with absolutely no support for their human or spiritual growth.
And Paula remembers the pain of having her own education stripped away at age 12.
Exactly. So she just starts gathering them. Every Sunday, she takes these village kids out into the woods and begins to teach them.
Wow. So she essentially starts tending the garden of the local youth.
That's a great way to put it.
It's such a small, localized action. Just a teenager in the woods with some village kids, but she's applying that informal education she absorbed from her brothers.
And this naturally sets the stage for a formal organization. By 1834, when Paula is about 25 years old, she and 6 of her friends officially form a small community.
Right. They call themselves the Daughters of Holy Faith. And they start teaching in a local church dedicated to Clare of Assisi.
But their commitment is tested almost immediately. Right as they are forming this community, a massive cholera epidemic hits the region of Genoa.
And cholera in the 1830s was absolutely terrifying. I mean, it was fast, deadly, highly contagious. Society was panicking.
Total panic. But Paola and her small group of sisters step right into the epicenter of the crisis. They start nursing the sick and the dying.
They're proving that their organization isn't just about classroom theory. It's about functioning in the harshest realities of their time.
Exactly. They're doing the grueling, dangerous groundwork. But the pivotal moment, the moment that links our 19th century LA to our 4th century legend, happens the very next year, in 1835.
Yes. The name change.
Right. Paola's brother, Giuseppe, introduces her to a friend of his, a priest named Father Luca Passi from Bergamo.
Okay.
Father Passi had started a project aimed at helping the poorest youth in rural communities, and he called his project the Pious Work of Saint Dorothy.
So he's invoking the 4th century martyr with a basket of apples. He's literally using her as the brand identity for fruitfulness and providing for those in need.
Precisely. But Father Passi has a major operational problem. His project is struggling. He has the vision and the name, but he doesn't have the ground game.
The organization just isn't gaining traction.
Right. Then he visits Quinto. He sees what Paola is doing with the Daughters of Holy Faith. He observes her natural ability to connect with marginalized kids, and he sees the absolute dedication of her team during the cholera outbreak.
So he approaches her with a proposal.
Yes, he does.
This struck me as, identical to a modern corporate pivot.
Oh, totally.
Think about the tech startup world today. You have a scrappy, highly effective team on the ground, Paola's group, that has the operations figured out perfectly, but maybe they lack a broader institutional identity.
Yep.
Then you have an older established brand, Father Passi's project, that has a great name and mission, but is failing to execute. So Father Passi basically hands the keys to the brand over to. He asks her to absorb his project.
And she accepts the proposal. They merge the vision. From that point forward, Paola and her companions become known as the Sisters of Saint Dorothy.
Wow.
They officially take on the mantle of the ancient gardener.
But we have to make it clear, though, that taking on a new name did not magically grant them, institutional respect.
Oh, definitely not.
Paola is now stepping out of the woods of a seaside village and trying to navigate the highly structured, highly critical world of 19th century church politics.
Right. And to solidify the organization, Paola had to write a formal rule, essentially a constitution detailing how her order would live, govern itself, and operate.
And she leverages her brother Giuseppe's theological background to help format all the practical field experience she had gained.
Yes. But when she presented this drafted rule to the local Jesuit priests for formal review, well, the historical accounts tell us they openly mocked and ridiculed her efforts.
Which is just brutal.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look at the social dynamics of the 1830s, it's obvious why. She is a woman with zero formal schooling, proposing a complex legal and spiritual document to an institution run by highly educated men.
Yeah, they scoffed at her.
It is the exact equivalent of Theophilus mocking Dorothy on her way to execution. It's the establishment looking at someone they deem powerless and asking, what could you possibly have to offer?
That's a perfect parallel. And how she handles that ridicule is really the defining mechanism of her success. She doesn't fight back with defensive anger.
Right.
And she doesn't retreat in shame either. Our sources quote her response to this mockery. She simply said, "Those who suffer most love most."
Those who suffer most love most. I mean, that is a completely paradigm-shifting way to process rejection.
It really is.
She takes the pain of being mocked, the trauma of her childhood isolation, the physical toll of her illness, and she just metabolizes all of it into empathy. It becomes the literal fuel for her mission.
And you see that philosophy manifest in how she viewed the children she was serving, particularly those who were cast aside by society.
Yeah.
In the 1800s, physical deformities often meant total societal outcast status. But the sources note Paola had a specific phrase for disfigured children. She called them pictures of God without a frame.
Oh, wow. Let's just pause on that phrase, pictures of God without a frame.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It completely strips away the external societal expectation of what is valuable. It forces you to ignore the damaged frame and look at the inherent masterpiece-level worth of the canvas itself.
And operating from that place of radical reframing is exactly what allowed her movement to scale so rapidly.
Because when an organization treats marginalized people with that level of inherent dignity, it's incredibly magnetic.
Exactly. It attracts both those who need help and those who want to help. And the expansion of her work is staggering.
Yeah, let's talk about that expansion.
By 1841, just a few years after being mocked by those local priests, Paula establishes a house in Rome. Soon after, Pope Gregory XVI officially approves the order.
And from there, she operationalizes a massive global expansion.
The logistics of this are fascinating, honestly. We are talking about the 1840s and 50s. To spread across continents, Paula leveraged the expanding steamship routes and existing Catholic missionary networks.
Right.
But she also used a decentralized model of trust. She didn't try to micromanage every school from a desk in Rome.
Which is how a lot of organizations fail, honestly.
Exactly. She trained her sisters, instilled them with her core philosophy of radical empathy, and then she put them on boats to Portugal, Malta, Brazil, and eventually the US, the UK, Africa, and Asia.
Which brings up a fascinating operational question for me. Paula is orchestrating this multi-continent expansion. You do not achieve that without immense drive and ambition.
True.
Yet one of her most cited quotes in our sources is her directive to work in full simplicity. How do you reconcile spreading a massive organization across the globe with working in full simplicity?
It sounds like a contradiction for sure, but it was actually her operational strategy.
Okay, how so?
If you read her letters to the sisters she sent abroad, you see she wasn't driven by corporate metrics or like a desire for institutional dominance. Her core driving mantra was, "The will of God is my paradise."
Meaning she wasn't forcing growth for the sake of growth.
Exactly. She was looking at the very next need in front of her. If a town in Brazil sent a letter saying they needed a school for orphan girls and she had sisters capable of going, she sent them.
So the simplicity was in her daily surrender to the immediate need.
Yes. She kept the overhead low and the adaptability high. The mission was simply to educate through heart and love. The geographical location was secondary. The method of how they treated the children was everything.
It's the ultimate practice of being entirely present in the work, rather than obsessing over the empire.
And she maintained that grounded perspective right up to the end of her life.
Yeah, the final years.
Her final years required a tremendous amount of that surrender. Starting in 1876, she suffered a series of paralyzing strokes.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, but even as her body was failing, people constantly sought her out for spiritual direction. The sources mention that people would come to her overwhelmed by the difficulties of life, sometimes even expressing a desire to die young just to escape the suffering.
I mean, that is a heavy burden to carry, to sit there paralyzed by a stroke and have to comfort healthy people who are despairing over just the daily friction of life.
Right, and her response to that despair was brilliant and very blunt. She would tell them, God did not ask us when we wish to be born, so he also does not need our suggestions about when we should die.
Wow. That is a striking way of pulling someone back to reality.
It really is.
It's a reminder that we don't control the boundaries of our existence.
Yeah.
We only control what we do with the soil we are planted in.
Precisely. On June 11th, 1882, at the age of 73, Paula Frassinetti died of pneumonia at the Mother House in Rome.
And her last recorded words were a simple prayer, right?
Yes. My mother, remember I am your child. And in 1906, her body was found to be incorrupt, and she was officially canonized as a saint by Pope John Paul II in 1984.
Which brings us full circle to why we gathered these specific sources for you today. What is the ultimate takeaway from a 4th century legend and a 19th century teenager?
It's a radical redefinition of what it means to be fruitful.
Exactly. True growth does not require the greenhouse. If you are facing unjust restrictions or a total lack of resources like Dorothy facing a Roman executioner,
Right.
or if you're dealing with debilitating illness, isolation, and a lack of formal education like Paula in Genoa, those limitations are not the end of your story.
In fact, those barren concrete environments might be the exact necessary conditions for your greatest legacy to take root.
Which leaves us with a totally different way to look at how we structure our own lives and projects today.
Because we spend so much energy trying to optimize our environments, we want the perfect conditions for our children, the flawless launch plan for our businesses, the ideal circumstances before we start a new habit.
We are terrified of friction. We want to eliminate all the suffering and resistance.
But the stories of Dorothy and Paolo point to a concept we might call anti-fragility.
Anti-fragility, I like that.
If you completely shield a seed from the wind, it never grows the strong root system it needs to survive a storm, becomes weak. Paola's capacity to love the marginalized, her empathy, her resilience, none of that could have been forged in a comfortable, perfectly optimized environment.
It required the trauma of her childhood and the physical limitation of her illness to build a system robust enough to last centuries.
Exactly.
So, the provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. Consider the area of your life right now where you are experiencing the most friction, the most limitation, or the most lack. What if that friction isn't an obstacle preventing your growth? What if that friction is the exact necessary training ground, building the strength you need to eventually shatter the concrete? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep tending your own garden, whatever the soil looks like today, and we'll catch you next time.